Welcome to News9 Plus. We are here at the Raisina Duologue 2023 and we have with us Mr. Arvind Gupta, Head of Digital India Foundation. Glad to have you with us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
I'll begin with the broad question. Why is suddenly there is so much talk of China developing digital and AI technologies?
I think it is suddenly in the global narrative because of the lot of actions China has done over the last few years. But to answer that question, let me take you back a few years to understand what China has been doing over the years, overtly and covertly. As you know, I classify technology coming from China as technology for surveillance. The technology coming out of US, technology for profit. But technology coming out of India is technology for development or data for development. Now, when I say technology for surveillance, China, we have realized, has been using its power and domestic market to create a lot of technological giants which are coming from the Shenzhen Valley, and they're really becoming very cash rich. And using that cash dominance, they have been systemically, with a lot of state sponsorship, supporting funding wise or expansion of what they don't permit in their own countries in other countries. So that could be used for influence operations, data gathering, spying, and all these pose challenges to national security of those respective nations. But because initially these technologies were low cost, free in many instances, countries started embracing it. While their overall stated goal was always to build a data superhouse, which can then be used to harvest better algorithms, better AI, and now into quantum computing for quantum post-quantum encryption. So it is a very, very long-term strategy that China has been playing, and they had been playing it in a very, very organized manner, very systemic manner, which is from the chip to the applications that run on top of it. Everything in between, the networks, the operating system, the phones, the hardware, to the applications. And I think the COVID shocks made the world realize that what is the dangers to this, and that there is nothing called a free lunch, and whenever the product is free, you are the product, when it came to Chinese technology. And when India banned Chinese technologies and Chinese platforms in India in June 2020, I think this is what sparked off the global debate on both sides, understanding how advanced Chinese technology has become, and two, what are the dangers it poses to democracies across the world. But their investment is real. Their investment is very from research to outcomes is very, very strong. I would not say they are ahead of the world, but they are amongst the top. And I'm glad that the rest of the world, including India, the US, the Quad countries, are catching up to the challenge being posed by the Chinese.
You spoke about catching up, and you spoke about quantum computing. There's recently been a report that they are investing $11 billion into quantum computing, more than the investment of Europe, India and America put together into quantum computing. Is that what is worrying us? That is my first question, and then I'll ask you the next one about qubits.
Number one, whatever number China quotes, I never trust any data coming out of China. So I don't know the dollar amount, and that does not matter. It's the outcomes that matter. Two, the strength of democracies coming together will outsmart any autocratic rule that exists. So China is in a very, very isolated corner when it comes to technology. And I think it will find itself tough, howsoever much money that it deploys through its own researchers, its own surrogates or others to win this war, this technology war, this AI war, this quantum computing war as it goes along. Today the world has not only in AI and quantum computing harmonized itself, coming together in making sure the policies are strengthened in our own ecosystems, and we are all working towards a responsible AI, responsible computing as we go forward. I can't say that about China.
One of the reasons that may be worrying is quantum computing itself, where this concept of qubits replacing binary, and qubits basically disguising themselves as binary and lying dormant in binary motivated working systems. Is that what is worrying? Because China is known as a sort of a rogue state in these matters. Is that what is worrying?
Well, there is a lot of aspects that are worrying. I won't get into the technical details of what is worrying. Worrying is that the fact that, while there is an AI race going on globally, and many nations who are data rich like India are the ones that are now realizing and actually are taking the lead to work with like-minded countries to make sure that we have, as I said, responsible AI and AI for development, not just responsible. But the weaponization of technology is real, and the example you give about qubits masquerading as binaries is real. But is the world preparing for that? The whole Quad is now understanding the impact of these emerging technologies in shaping geopolitics and security considerations of the future. So the very clear message I want to say is that we are preparing for this. This has been a very hot topic of discussion during the Raisina Duologues, not only just 2023 that we are sitting here today, but in the past also. So I think we have come a long way in making sure the strength of a cooperative like a Quad and other countries is going to counter this threat as it moves along.
Talking about China itself, while on the subject, what do you see about China has been the manufacturing hub, and they have given birth to some of the best entrepreneurs in the last 15 years at least. But now there is a talk of and there are examples, of course, also, of China not being such a good place for entrepreneurs who do a little too well for themselves. What are your opinions in the beginning of this, and then I'll go on to my next question related to this.
See, you have to understand, India is a country where rule of law persists. You may, and if you are very successful or may not be successful, as an entrepreneur, you have freedom to operate. There's a rule of law that operates. You can comment in the favor of the government. You can have your own personal freedom of speech, but your business is not impacted if you're doing a fair business. That cannot be said any longer about China. And the beneficial ownerships that every company in China has, which somewhere leading to their top brass, is what scares, I think, the world now. And some of the billionaires which we have read suddenly disappeared from China and appeared in different parts of the world. So I would be concerned with the Shenzhen model of entrepreneurship, as I call it. There is 4 models of entrepreneurship in the world: the Silicon Valley entrepreneurship model, the Shenzhen Valley, the Israel, Wadi, the Silicon Wadi of Israel model of entrepreneurship, and the Indian model. I would be worried for the Shenzhen model, but for them. But I don't think so. The rapid pace of creation of unicorns that China was seeing, that same pace will continue.
It will?
It will not continue. I don't see that happening in the future.
Could you just elaborate a little bit about the Shenzhen model of entrepreneurship?
A lot of state funded, local market, create a lot of local market dominance, and get a lot of state support, not only in expansion of the market, but be subservient to the state in whatever they're doing. And that's why there was inherent, and this is my study of it, inherent ask the state always had when the company became big. And these companies were used for their geopolitical extensions and the geopolitical tools. So now, the role models that if I'm a Chinese entrepreneur that I was looking at these big companies as are shaken now. And without the existence of role models, the mentorship model, no Shenzhen model of entrepreneurship can succeed. So the fundamental roots, I think, have been shaken, and that I think in the future the mindset of entrepreneurs there is to shift to Singapore or to Hong Kong or Middle East and other countries, and we are already seeing that happen.
Explain me one thing: if there was a model where the government did not allow entrepreneurs to or there was a glass ceiling, let's say, why would they appear in another country after a few years?
Well, what was expected of them, is suddenly they become global citizens and global thought leaders. And I think it's not that 100% of them have become disappeared and appeared somewhere else. It's a few of them which probably were trying to lead a different life, just apart from being a billionaire, to be global thought leaders, and they're suddenly seeing that their thought leadership or their personality is not suiting the Chinese model. So that's why they are, I think, disappearing and appearing somewhere else. And it's not just a conflict about ownership and money, it's also a conflict of their own stand in the global community.
Let's talk about Alibaba. It was such a successful company, probably still is, not as much. What does the government or establishment stand to gain from letting go the person who basically ideated the whole thing?
I can't speak for the Chinese, but
is there a logic you see at play over
well,
here?
that's what I'm going to add to it. The logic I see is it's my way or the highway. Your opinion does not count. If I am telling that to the Alibaba owner or the Ant financial owner, which are all common, is that you have to be subservient to us, not only just during an expansion phase, but every phase in your life. So if you don't follow the stick, you get the stick.
Going forward, the manufacturing supply chain has been disrupted. Everybody is talking about China plus one. So that would disturb China, I would presume. Do you see a revival of entrepreneurship in China, as you say, promoted or encouraged by the establishment?
Again, I can't speak for what Chinese will do or should do, right? But let me comment on this China plus one. Supply chains don't change overnight, and it takes time. And companies have, like India is now the offshoring hub, outsourcing hub for the world. When that gets embedded into the business systems, the business processes, it's very difficult to, over a year or two, just to shift everything out of a country. Same applies to manufacturing, whether it's semiconductors or it's phones or cars and critical components for tons of other things, ingredients for pharmaceuticals. Countries are taking a very calibrated approach of both, and India is a great example of that, both make in India, that is local manufacturing, as well as seeing how can you keep maneuvering the China plus one strategy while maintaining the balance over the transition period of the next 8 to 12 years. It's not going to happen overnight. So whenever people talk about the China plus one, that's the right thing in the future. And we've seen about 40 big plants either move out of China or descale in China and scale up some other parts of the world, whether it's Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia and India. But it is being done with a lot of, and corporates are doing that themselves with the right local support. It has to be done very strategically, and the balance has to be maintained, because you cannot just cut off China immediately. And China also knows that. So if I'm, as I said, I don't speak for China, I don't carry a brief for China. My whole conversation has been about what misdeeds China has been doing. So Chinese are also, but I never underplay the Chinese, their understanding. They're as strong in understanding the strategy as they should be. So it poses a risk to them. I can't speak for them how they will react, but I'm sure they will react and they will recalibrate themselves.
They will react. And talking about, like you said about China, that you can't underestimate them. Chinese have always been about regional dominance. That seems to be going away. What do you see them doing next? Is it cyber or is it something else? Or
Cyber
is it
they're
military?
already doing. Cyber and technology they're already doing. State
How
and
far will
non-state.
they go?
State and non-states. China has been one of the biggest actors, non-state actors in this region for all the a lot of ransomware or a lot of attacks that we have seen in our geography. So it's been a very active player, and their money is not welcome in many places. So that is a shock to them, and they'll have to see how they create new structures, and I think that will also force them geopolitically to come and align themselves and become more responsible global citizens. So there are multiple issues that we are seeing from the Chinese dominance, manufacturing, China plus one, technology, financing getting challenged, venture capital coming out of China is not welcome, and then slowly the trust in the systems is eroding. America is talking about banning Chinese technology now, right? Huawei is not allowed in Australia, India, and many other countries. So there is a very, very big erosion of trust, and that erosion of trust is something that is causing them a lot of worry.
There's been, my last two questions, a lot of talk about the 5G war. You just mentioned Huawei. Who do you see has the upper hand, and where do you see this going?
Well, first of all, India is a prime example that you can build a low-cost, frugal, innovation, domestic 5G network which has no Chinese components. And we have, Jio, if you take one company as an example, has rolled out to what, 220 plus cities of India, fastest 5G rollout in the world. And it has zero, according to Jio, they don't have any Chinese technology in it and still low cost. So I think India is a prime example that what was perceived to be free or low cost is necessarily not in the long run free. You're paying for by privacy invasions, data theft, and ultimately compromising your national security. 5G wars are, and it's not a war actually. It's a reality that has already happened, and I think I'm glad countries like India have shown that it can be done.
Last question, sir. Do you see more entrepreneurs from China choosing countries outside of China to set up base?
Already has started. As I answered in the past, a lot of entrepreneurs who are mid-level successful have moved base out of, but a lot of can't, because if you're a manufacturing entrepreneur, if you're a battery entrepreneur, if you're a local consumption oriented entrepreneur, if your product is consumed locally, you can't. But people who had global ambitions or global footprints have already moved out. You will see, unless the Chinese recalibrate, a lot of Chinese entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs of Chinese origin denouncing their Chinese citizenship. So I want to just give a different positive spin. We talked about China a lot, but please do understand that technology that emanates, I already called the technology that emanates from China as technology for surveillance, and the technology that is there in the US is more technology for profit. But India, what we did not talk about is what India has presented to the world, the data for development approach, the technology for development approach, which is more societal technology. I think that's the future. It has trust, low cost, volumes, and serves the bottom of the pyramid, and ensures that all components of the society develop together, which is the government, society at large, businesses and startups. And that is the alternate to this whole existing models of development or platformization of the world that we are seeing as a counter from India. So I think that is, on a positive note, I want to end this conversation.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.